Welcome back to Midnight Movie Club and my review of Fear Street Part 2, 1978. Fear Street Part 2 transports us back to 1978, where a summer of fun turns into a gruesome fight for survival as a killer terrorises Camp Nightwing in the cursed town of Shadyside. Fear Street Part 2 was directed by Lee Janiak, once again, who also directed Part 1, and she also co-wrote the screenplay again with Zach Olkowitz. Now, we all know my feelings on Part 1. I gave it a 2 out of 5 rating. Really was not a fan of Part 1 at all, but I really have to say Part 2 is far better. Oh my god, so much better, leaps and bounds better than Part 1. But once again, it's not great. Honestly, Part 2 would have been great if it weren't for the witch story. I really feel like if it was just a summer camp slasher throwback, it could have been a lot better. I really do feel like this witch story, this backstory that connects these three movies together, really held Part 2 back. One thing that suffers due to this witch stuff is the pace. The pacing, by God, the first 42 minutes of this film, nothing happens. We get a bunch of angsty teens arguing and making Stephen King references. Honestly, it takes 42 minutes for us to get a kill. And, you know, I'm not bad with slow burn films or anything like that, but this is not slow burn. It's literally people just retreading the same dialogue that we've got in Part 1, you know, figuring out the same myth, learning the same rules, but the audience already know it because we learned all that stuff with the protagonist in Part 1. We don't need to learn it all again in Part 2. Honestly, you could have just left the characters oblivious to the story and trying to figure things out, and they could have just fought it in a pretty futile attempt to fight it, and, you know, ended up losing in the end. I know that they had to have a survivor so that they can tie it into the modern day story, but once again, it's the fact that it has to tie into this modern day story and this backstory of the witch that it just holds it back, because we literally just get 40 minutes of the same things being explained and argued about, and honestly, it does get really tiring. And just as I was about to switch off and it was just about to take me out of the movie and I was about to give up, boom, it kicks off. And honestly, once Part 2 kicks off, it honestly becomes really entertaining. I really enjoyed the second half of this film. It really just feels like a great 70s throwback slasher to like something like Friday the 13th. My favourite Friday the 13th movies are probably Part 2 and Part 3. I've also got love for X. Who doesn't have love for X? But I'm a huge Friday the 13th fan, and I really loved everything about this that just reminded me of those movies. And honestly, I said in Part 1, nostalgia was fooling people into thinking the movie was good. Here, I feel like they used the nostalgia much better. The references were a lot better as well. They weren't pure ham-fisted in there into the dialogue. They actually made sense. You know, I noticed there was a lot of Stephen King references, obviously. I'm not going to say too much. I don't want to spoil too much. There's also an Exorcist reference in there too. Obviously some Friday the 13th stuff as well, which is great. You know, you always have fun spotting those little Easter eggs as they pop up in dialogue and in props and set design. That's one thing I really think it done well as well. It really captured the era with the soundtrack, the set design, and the costume design, and just kind of all those stereotypes of that era. I mean, I didn't grow up in the 70s or anything like that, I didn't live through that era, but to me it looks like the 70s and looks like those old slasher movies I used to watch. I'd say with Part 2, the characters are far more likeable. The sister dynamic actually works. Like I said, I wasn't sure at the start of the movie, but it does come together nicely by the end. Most of the other characters are pretty bland, though, to be honest. It's really just the sisters we really care about, and maybe Sheriff Goode as well, young Sheriff Goode. Apart from them three, you don't really care about anyone else. Most of our characters are boring and bland and not charismatic at all, but you know, a lot of them are just there to get murdered, so it doesn't really matter. One thing that does annoy me though is just the out of the blue exposition some characters have, and you can tell when some of them are going to get killed off because they'll just drop a sob story 2 seconds before it happens. Like they're like, oh shit, the audience don't really care about this person right now, let's give them about 10 lines of why we should care, and then we'll chuck an axe in their face. No, that does not make me care. It makes me roll my eyes and go, well, yeah, I seen that coming. And like I said, throughout the film, there's just a lot of retreading of the same information that we got in the first one as this new group find stuff out, and it just gets a little bit boring. Logic also seems to be thrown out the window a little bit. I don't know, but if kids were attacked by a worker at a summer camp, I don't think the police would come and arrest that worker and then just leave the kids to their own devices again and not get the parents to all come pick them up, you know, in case something like that happened again. I don't know, that just seemed weird to me at the start of the movie. I really do feel like the police would have intervened a bit more, but they kind of just let the kids get on with it, and it's like, yeah, that seems a little bit weird to me. But hey, maybe that's the curse, you know, clouding our judgment. I don't know, I'm sure we can chalk it up to that. Why not? There's also just a lot of convenient stuff that happens as well to save the plot, just to make sure that the plot keeps moving forward. I really don't know how they built a mall around a certain tree, but something that was buried under like maybe a foot of dirt wasn't dug up or moved or shifted at all when they built that massive fucking mall around it. It's just in the exact same place it was, you know, like 20 odd years prior, which to me seemed very, very convenient. Just lazy things like that are kind of annoying. But honestly, the slasher stuff, the kills are awesome. There's awesome gore. And right at the end, there's a brutal savage attack. And it kind of caught me off guard. And I was like, holy shit, wow, okay, yeah, more of that, please. Honestly, this one's probably just worth it for the kills and the slasher throwback vibes. Just have some beers, have some pizza, and enjoy and have a laugh. And just maybe skip the first 40 minutes. Or, you know, laugh at the cringy dialogue. I don't really care. Then at the end, once again, we do get a little look into the next film. This time being set in 1666. Very on the nose once again. But anyway, it looks like they're using the same characters. But, you know, in the past, I don't think it's them being reincarnated or anything like that. I'm pretty sure it's just the same actors playing different characters from the past. Not a fan of that. Not a fan of that at all. Really not a fan of that, because I really don't like the actors from part 1, or at least their characters. I just don't find them likeable at all. Hopefully I like them more in 1666, but I don't know, man. Dina and Sam, they're just very flat. I just didn't care about them for some reason. I don't know why. Like, their performances just came across very, very flat. The 2 most likeable people in part 1 actually get killed, which is a shame, but, you know, whatever. Anyway, part 2 was a lot better than part 1, but still not great. So I'm going to give Fear Street Part 2 1978 a 3 out of 5 rating. Great kills and gore, cool slasher 70s throwback vibes. Everything else, pretty bang average. So, you know, take from that what you will. I know there's a lot of people out there absolutely loving this series, and that's great to hear, but for me, it's just not been that good so far. I honestly hated part 1, and this one was barely passable, just passable. So I'm really hoping there's, you know, more to come from 1666, and hopefully they tie this all up nicely. We'll see how they do it. I'm still looking forward to seeing how it ends, but I won't hold my breath. But once again, it's just awesome to see something like this, like a horror movie trilogy getting like this much spotlight and attention on the world's biggest streaming platform. That is awesome for the genre, and I really hope it is successful, even if I don't end up liking the whole series as a whole, just because I want to see the genre do well and have more events like this in the future. Anyway, let me know what you made of part 2 in the comment section down below. Like this review if you enjoyed, dislike it if you hated, and subscribe if you are new to the channel to join the club. As always, thank you very much for watching, and good night.